Winter of '83. Created by director Nathaniel Curtis, Winter of '83 is a lesser-known analog horror series that first surfaced on YouTube in 2021. It sets the tone for everything analog horror aims to achieve. The story centers around a small unnamed American town in the winter of 1983. Through distorted VHS tapes, fake news segments, and emergency alerts, we learn that something anomalous is happening with the local weather patterns. As the temperature drops and strange sky phenomena emerge, the townspeople begin to disappear. The series never fully explains the event, but that's the point, leaving viewers to fill in the blanks with dread. And what makes Winter of '83 stand out is its use of degraded visual quality to enhance fear. Though not as long or widely known as Local 58 or Gemini Home Entertainment, it's praised by fans of the genre for its subtle escalation and atmospheric world-building. It was one of the early analog horror works that leaned heavily into environmental fear rather than direct antagonists, making it a key influence on later series. Greylock. First appearing in 2022, this analog horror series made an impression despite its mysterious origins. While its exact creator remains somewhat obscure, the content itself is anything but forgettable. The Greylock series revolves around a fictional town named Greylock, nestled in the Pacific Northwest, where reality appears to warp through corrupted television signals, emergency broadcasts, and fragmented surveillance tapes. At first glance, the town seems ordinary, until you're shown public service announcements warning residents not to trust their reflections and school safety videos that dissolve into cryptic instructions about alternate individuals. The deeper you go, the clearer it becomes that something inhuman has found its way into Greylock, and it's been there a long time. What gives Greylock its distinct flavor is its approach to fear. It doesn't rely on sudden shocks. Instead, it plays with repetition, corrupted language, and institutional messaging to build paranoia. A recurring element in the series is the Switch, an unexplained event that suggests certain residents of Greylock have been replaced. By what or why, the tapes never say. Fans compare its tone to Welcome to Night Vale if it were filtered through broken cassette tapes and broadcast towers. And despite its relatively short run, Greylock has quickly gained a following for its careful pacing, deadpan delivery, and grounded use of real-world government aesthetics to sell its unease. Gemini Home Entertainment. Created by Remy Abode and uploaded to YouTube starting in late 2019, this analog horror series is one of the most well-known and influential in the genre. It presents itself as a collection of educational VHS tapes from the 80s and early 90s, covering topics like wildlife, astronomy, geology, and home safety. But the deeper you go, the clearer it becomes that something is horribly wrong with the natural order of things. The brilliance of Gemini Home Entertainment lies in its slow unraveling. The tapes begin innocent. A documentary about deep-sea creatures, a video on tree identification, a slideshow about home defense, but each one carries a sinister twist. Forests are infested with parasitic life forms. Alien beings called the Iris are manipulating biological evolution. Human civilizations may have already been infiltrated. Every tape adds another piece to a larger puzzle of planetary-scale invasion and ancient unknowable forces. One recurring idea is the concept of the woodcrawlers, disturbing spider-like entities linked to deep forests, and the Iris, celestial bodies or beings that warp time, biology, and perception. There's also an implied apocalypse already underway as humans are gradually being replaced, reprogrammed, or harvested. The series doesn't rely on characters or direct plot. Instead, it builds its mythology through fake corporate branding, corrupt emergency broadcasts, and media glitches. Everything is presented as if the viewer is watching training materials created by organizations trying to understand or contain something far beyond their reach. Rather than going for shock or jump scares, Gemini uses altered logic to create a sense of dread. The Trinity Desk Project. This lesser-known analog horror series slowly gained attention for its clinical tone and deeply disturbing concept. The setup is deceptively simple. It documents a research initiative by a fictional government or scientific body attempting to study a seemingly ordinary office desk. But this desk, referred to as the Trinity Desk, turns out to be anything but ordinary. Presented as a collection of lab notes, voice recordings, and surveillance footage, the series methodically details strange phenomena occurring around the object. Items placed on the desk vanish or reappear altered. Time behaves inconsistently near it, and most unsettling of all, individuals exposed to the desk for extended periods begin to act erratically, report vivid hallucinations, or disappear entirely. One of the most disturbing motifs involves silence. Long periods of nothing, followed by distorted human screams or sudden cuts to blackout. The implication is that the desk made contact with something not just alien, but incompatible with human thought. Something that sees the experimenters as a curiosity, or perhaps prey. The Trinity Desk Project doesn't go viral like the Mandela Catalog or the Backrooms, but it's arguably more unsettling in its restraint. It feels like something you shouldn't be watching, like some sort of footage that escaped destruction by accident. Hare. Masquerading as a harmless cartoon from the early 2000s, this analog horror series quickly unravels its own illusion. At first glance, it appears to be a lost children's show centered on a wide-eyed pastel-colored rabbit named Hare. The visuals are soft and nostalgic, and the music mimics early PBS programming, creating a comforting low-budget aesthetic. But very quickly, things fall apart. Episodes begin to include abrupt cuts, unsettling close-ups, and characters that move or speak out of sync with their animation. Hare herself starts saying things that don't make sense, referencing locations or people never introduced in the show. The colors degrade, the voices distort, and background details start to shift. In one episode, a door appears where there was none before. In another, a child's sobbing is faintly heard under the theme song. And then there are the cuts, quick flashes of unknown rooms, VHS-style glitches, and moments where the screen lingers just a second too long. The deeper you go, the more you start noticing hidden messages. There's no official creator credited, just an upload, a channel with no other activity, and a community of viewers trying to decode what they're seeing. Local 58. Often credited with defining modern analog horror, Local 58 is a fictional public access TV station created by Chris Strobe. It mimics the feel of late-night broadcasts gone wrong, and uses those glitches to tell a story that's never fully explained, but always deeply unsettling. Episodes vary wildly in format. Some appear as weather updates, others as children's programming, PSA slideshows, or moon landing footage, but they all share a common thread. Something is manipulating the broadcast. In Weather Service, the emergency alert system tells viewers to go outside during a disaster, despite earlier warnings to stay in. In Contingency, the channel airs a Cold War-era government tape. The timeline is non-linear, the events are fragmented, and nothing is ever directly confirmed. But across its short episodes, Local 58 builds a mythos involving a hostile force behind the mood and psychological manipulation. The Smile Tapes. Released in 2022 by creator Padariku, The Smile Tapes taps into a deeply uncomfortable brand of analog horror, one where happiness itself becomes a threat. The story takes place in an alternate 1990s where a mysterious drug called Smile begins circulating. Instead of relief or euphoria, the drug causes users to contort into permanent grins, lose their grip on reality, and eventually descend into violence or vanish entirely. The series is presented through recovered camcorder footage, infomercials, public safety announcements, and corrupted PSAs. Each episode builds the world without ever directly explaining it, allowing viewers to piece together the terrifying implications on their own. One tape might feature a school assembly about the dangers of Smile, while another shows surveillance footage of someone slowly losing their mind. A defining strength of the Smile Tapes is how it blurs the line between nostalgia and dread. The grainy VHS texture and period-specific aesthetics draw you in, but the slow, quiet horror beneath the surface keeps you unsettled. The pacing is slow, intentional, and methodical, leaning heavily on atmosphere instead of cheap jump scares. It also plays with the idea of collective denial. Society in the series continues to function, even as more and more people disappear or fall victim to the drug. For analog horror fans, The Smile Tapes stands out as a bleak, stylish series that digs into psychological unease through minimalism and implication. The Oldest View. One of the lesser-known entries in Kane Pixel's expanding analog horror catalog, this project stands out as one of the most conceptually ambitious. Released after the viral success of the Backrooms, it shifts focus from liminal spaces to a far more abstract form of horror, time and perception. The series centers around the discovery of a recording, supposedly the oldest surviving visual record ever captured. As researchers begin analyzing the footage, they notice distortions, anomalies, and inexplicable geometric phenomena embedded within the frames. What initially seems like degraded archival material gradually reveals something much more terrifying: the presence of a non-human intelligence observing back. The footage itself seems to react to scrutiny. Kane Pixels uses his signature blend of lo-fi visuals and hyper-realistic CGI to great effect here. The minimalist visuals, combined with scientific logs, glitch-ridden timestamps, and increasingly cryptic documentation, build tension through implication rather than exposition. One of the core themes is epistemological horror, the fear that our tools for understanding the world are inherently flawed. By attempting to document something ancient and incomprehensible, the researchers slowly unravel, not because of what they see, but because of the implications of seeing at all. The Oldest View may not have as wide a following as the Backrooms, but it's one of Kane Pixel's most cerebral projects to date. The Mandela Catalog. Created by Alex Kister and launched in 2021, the Mandela Catalog helped bring analog horror into the mainstream with its deeply disturbing promise and polished execution. The series presents a fictional Midwestern county plagued by alternates, inhuman entities that mimic people with subtle but terrifying imperfections. These creatures don't just imitate, they infiltrate, replacing loved ones, altering memories, and pushing victims toward madness. The core idea is simple. What if something looked exactly like someone you know, but wasn't? That fear drives the series across several volumes, told through police training tapes, emergency broadcast system alerts, surveillance footage, and personal confessionals. The tone is deliberately cold and procedural, which contrasts with the emotional weight of the content. Episodes are rarely longer than 15 minutes, but they linger in your mind long after. The design of the alternates is a major part of the horror. Kister leans heavily on the uncanny valley, faces that are just slightly off, eyes too wide or too empty, smiles held too long. But it's not just visuals. The dialogue is fragmented, with glitched audio, corrupted caption, references that deepen the dread. While the first volume introduces the concept, later entries expand the mythology. There's mention of the intruder, the think principle, and recurring motifs like religious iconography, mental health warnings, and forbidden knowledge. The deeper you dive, the more disoriented you become, mirroring the characters who can't trust their own senses or memories. The Mandela Catalog's blend of religious dread, identity horror, and analog aesthetics has inspired countless fan theories and spin-offs. It's one of the most influential entries in the genre, and a defining example of how analog horror can turn minimalism into existential fear. The Backrooms. First uploaded by YouTuber Kane Pixels in January 2022, The Backrooms became an instant phenomenon by adapting a viral internet creepypasta into a fully realized analog horror universe. The concept originated in 4chan threads, describing an endless yellow maze of liminal office spaces, buzzing fluorescent lights, damp carpet, no windows. Kane took that setting and built a chilling narrative around it using found footage, corporate training tapes, and faux government documents. The first video, simply titled The Backrooms Found Footage, presents a short film in which a cameraman accidentally clips out of reality during a shoot and finds himself in a strange, sterile labyrinth. At first, the location seems empty, but he's soon pursued by an unseen, glitchy entity. The handheld perspective, low-resolution style, and spatial disorientation make this one of the most effective analog horror introductions online. Rather than stopping at a one-off, Kane Pixels expanded the series into a timeline involving the fictional Async Foundation, a secretive organization that discovers and attempts to utilize the Backrooms for teleportation and storage purposes. Their experiments lead to disastrous consequences. Throughout the series, viewers are drip-fed information through corrupt training videos, leaked memos, and security footage. The deeper the story goes, the more horrifying the implications become. Kane's work on the Backrooms is especially notable for its technical sophistication. Despite being a teenager, he used Blender and visual effects tools to simulate analog film aesthetics while crafting complex 3D environments. The sound design, distorted ambiance, echoing mechanical hums, and abrupt silences creates the atmosphere. Unlike many analog horror series, the Backrooms mixed urban legend, corporate conspiracy, and body horror with a highly cinematic presentation. It's a story of reality breaking down, with humanity standing helpless in the face of a dimensional space that doesn't care if you live, die, or simply disappear. Eventide Media Center. A lesser-known but meticulously crafted analog horror series, this one surfaced on YouTube in 2022 and was created by Mindnight. It draws immediate comparisons to Local 58 and Gemini Home Entertainment, but it takes a more introspective approach in both tone and execution. The series is presented as a collection of archived broadcasts and corrupt VHS tapes from a fictional public access TV station known as the Eventide Media Center, which operated during the late 80s and early 90s. The videos mimic the aesthetic of that era with stunning accuracy. Tape distortions, regional news anchors, old-school bumpers, and emergency alerts all play into the world building. Initially, the content appears innocent, a gardening show, an astronomy program, and local children's content. But over time, the station's footage becomes corrupted by increasingly disturbing intrusions. Something has hijacked the broadcast. Strange symbols, cryptic warnings, and haunting voiceovers begin to interrupt the mundane programming. A key element of Eventide Media Center is its slow-burn pacing. It doesn't throw horror in your face. Instead, it builds tension through subtle inconsistencies. A newscaster's face glitches slightly, a children's song changes lyrics mid-performance, or a star map suddenly contains constellations that don't exist. There's a clear influence from cosmic horror, suggesting that some unknowable entity or force is leaking through the signal, manipulating viewers through seemingly harmless transmissions. The series also plays with themes of memory, cognition, and manipulation. Viewers are left wondering whether the broadcast itself is sentient, or if something even more abstract is pulling the strings behind the scenes. It doesn't provide easy answers, and that's part of what makes it so compelling. Eventide Media Center stands out by making the familiar feel off, taking comfort TV from the past and quietly injecting dread until the whole broadcast structure feels compromised. It's not just what you're watching, but the eerie feeling that something else is watching with you. Blue Channel. First appearing online in early 2023, this analog horror series feels like something you accidentally uncovered from a corrupted VHS tape buried in your basement. It's a minimalist yet deeply disturbing project that operates on the edge of surrealism, psychological unease, and broadcast distortion. Unlike other series that lean heavily on narrative exposition, Blue Channel lets its visuals do most of the talking. The premise is deceptively simple. It appears to be the remnants of an old public access TV station, broadcast through a strange frequency known only as Blue Channel. Each video is set against a deep blue backdrop and typically features abstract figures, distorted human faces, static-filled rooms, and looping phrases that become increasingly nonsensical or threatening. There's rarely any coherent dialogue, just cryptic text overlays, glitched-out voices, or mechanical hum of dead air. The horror comes not from jump scares, but from overwhelming discomfort. Certain motifs repeat across entries, such as a figure referred to only as the Watcher, a countdown that never finishes, or a voice that pleads with the viewer to stay awake. Over time, these motifs build a larger sense of dread, hinting that the channel may be broadcasting more than just signals. Another unique aspect of Blue Channel is its refusal to guide the viewer. There are no in-universe explanations, no fake news reports, and no anchoring characters. It's more about atmosphere and psychological tension than plot, and this lack of structure is precisely what draws fans in. Visually, the series sticks to its blue aesthetic and disciplined precision, which ends up being far more disorienting than expected. Faces fade into the blue, rooms disappear into shadow, and the boundary between signal and entity begins to blur. It's this commitment to abstraction that allows Blue Channel to stand out in a genre already defined by its uncanny nature. And that wraps up part 1 of our analog horror dive. If you're new and wondering where to start, Gemini Home Entertainment is a solid gateway. It's structured, unsettling, and brilliantly escalates its horror without ever breaking the analog format. Enjoying the series so far? Then hit the like button, drop a comment with your favorite entry, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss part 2, where we'll be uncovering even more hidden gems. Goodbye! The Walten Files, Martin Walls. Created by Martin Walls and first uploaded in 2020, The Walten Files is a long-form analog horror series that presents itself as leaked training tapes and archival footage from the fictional Bob's Burgers franchise, a 1970s fast food chain with animatronic mascots. The series draws inspiration from Five Nights at Freddy's, but it takes the concept into a darker and more psychological direction. The tapes appear to document the history of Bob's Burgers, its animatronic characters, and the people behind the business. But across the episodes, the viewer begins to uncover disturbing hints of disappearances, corporate negligence, and something far worse hidden inside the animatronics themselves. The story isn't told directly. Instead, it's pieced together through corrupted footage, employee training segments, and unsettling behind-the-scenes clips. Much of the horror comes from the way the tapes were structured. Happy, upbeat training videos will suddenly glitch into grainy, distorted footage of malfunctioning animatronics or faint screams in the background. Viewers are left to interpret the timeline themselves, as names, dates, and events are only partially explained. Because the Walten Files thrives on leaving gaps, there's debate among viewers about certain events and character fates. Some connections are implied, not confirmed. The ambiguity has led to extensive fan theories, with the creator confirming only fragments over time. Marble Hornets. Launched in 2009 by Troy Wagner and Joseph Delage, Marble Hornets is often credited as one of the first major analog-style web series, though it predates the current wave of VHS-era aesthetics. It's presented as a collection of YouTube entries uploaded by a character named Jay, who claims he is piecing together footage left behind by his friend Alex. Alex had abandoned his student film project, citing paranoia and a mysterious figure stalking him during production. The uploaded clips reveal a fragmented, non-linear narrative. Through shaky camcorder footage, corrupted audio, and abrupt cuts, Jay discovers that Alex, and later himself, is being targeted by an unknown entity known as the Operator. Fans recognize this as a variant of Slender Man, though the series never uses the name directly. The Operator doesn't speak or attack traditionally. It appears in the distance, disrupts electronics, and triggers memory loss and psychological collapse in those it follows. Unlike later analog horror series that lean into surreal broadcasts, Marble Hornets feels grounded in its execution. Most of its tension comes from long stretches of silence, unexpected distortions, and the implications that the characters are losing control of their own perception. There are no overt explanations, and many events are intentionally left unclear, forcing the audience to assemble a timeline from incomplete evidence. The series ran for 92 entries over several years, with a few side videos releasing on a separate channel called Tot Heart. Its impact on online horror was significant, influencing later projects like Local 58 and inspiring countless ARGs. While it isn't pure analog horror in the sense of mimicking old TV broadcasts, its found footage style and cryptic presentation paved the way for the format to thrive online. CHSS, 2016. CHSS is a short-form analog horror project released in 2016, though its creator remains largely anonymous and information surrounding the series is intentionally scarce. The title itself, standing for Closed Hotel Secret Station as fans theorize, is never explained in the footage. The project consists of a handful of cryptic clips, styled as degraded archival material from a now-abandoned location, possibly a hotel or transit hub. The footage maintains static-heavy security camera recordings, muted color palettes, and intermittent bursts of distorted audio. Viewers catch glimpses of empty hallways, lights flickering in repeated patterns, and occasional silhouettes that seem to vanish as soon as the footage skips. There are no spoken lines or conventional characters, only captions and faint notes scrawled over certain frames. These captions reference things like scheduled departure and prepare the lower levels, though the context is never provided. Unlike many analog horror series that build sprawling lore, CHSS is deliberately minimalist. It relies almost entirely on atmosphere and unanswered questions. There's no confirmation on whether the threat is supernatural, extraterrestrial, or something entirely human. Some fans have speculated that the project was a proof of concept for a larger series that was never completed, but others believe its unfinished, disconnected nature is the intended effect. Because of how little is officially documented, CHSS is often left open to interpretation. It remains a niche entry in the genre, primarily discussed among enthusiasts who prefer analog horror projects that give viewers almost nothing to hold onto, forcing the fear to come from their own imagination. The Monument Mythos. Created by Alex Casanos, also known as Mr. Manticore, and uploaded between 2020 and 2022, the Monument Mythos is a sprawling analog horror universe that uses government propaganda, public service announcements, and archival-style footage to reimagine American history. The series presents an alternate version of the United States where national monuments, landmarks, and even political figures are tied to supernatural and otherworldly events. Each video is styled like a government-produced broadcast, often featuring calm narration over patriotic music and stock footage. At first glance, they seem like standard educational or historical shorts, but small details begin to fracture the illusion. Monuments like the Lincoln Memorial and Mount Rushmore are shown to be connected to colossal, possibly sentient beings. The Washington Monument is presented as a structure holding something alive beneath it. Historical events and political figures are subtly rewritten, hinting at a parallel America operating under the surface of the one we know. The series builds an interconnected lore rather than a straightforward plot. Different videos reference each other indirectly, adding layers to the overarching mythology. While there are recurring figures and names, most of the horror comes from the broader implications. The foundations of the country itself are tied to incomprehensible, possibly hostile forces. Fans have debated whether the series leans more towards satire or horror, as its surreal reinterpretations of Americana often walk the line between unsettling and straight-up absurd. Vita Carnis, Darian Quilloy. Created by Darian Quilloy and first uploaded in 2022, Vita Carnis presents itself as a series of found educational videos and scientific briefings documenting a bizarre alternate ecosystem. The title, which translates from Latin as living flesh, refers to the central concept, organisms on Earth, or something parallel to Earth, that are composed entirely of living, self-sustaining flesh rather than traditional plant or animal biology. Each episode mimics the style of nature documentaries or corporate training tapes, using calm narration and straightforward visuals to describe these creatures. Early segments showcase organisms like the meat snake, a massive fleshy creature that slithers across landscapes, and the crawler, a humanoid mass of muscle and tendon that functions as a scavenger species. While the presentation is clinical, the imagery is deeply unsettling. These organisms appear to function within their own food chain, suggesting an entire biosphere running parallel to, or even replacing, the natural world as we know it. The series gradually shifts from mere documentation to hints of catastrophe. Later videos imply that the presence of these creatures may not be natural at all. Certain tapes reference containment efforts, while others suggest that humanity is adapting into this new order of flesh-based life. What sets Vita Carnis apart is its mix of digital animation and VHS-era degradation. The visuals are intentionally rough and often grotesque, but they're paired with matter-of-fact narration that treats even the most horrifying entities as if they're routine biology lessons. This contrast heightens the unease, making each discovery feel both mundane and apocalyptic. And because the series relies heavily on implication, fans debate whether Vita Carnis depicts an alternate Earth, a future timeline, or an invasion scenario. Harmony and Horror. Created by Baddington in 2019, Harmony and Horror uses the format of old VHS recordings to tell a story about cursed toys, haunted objects, and the people connected to them. The series centers on the fictional Harmony Toys Company, whose products, particularly a doll named Henry, seem to carry a lingering malignant presence. The videos mix children's programming aesthetics with sudden jarring horror, creating a clash between innocence and dread. Instead of following a single linear storyline, the series unfolds through fragmented recordings, old commercials, corrupted training videos, recovered home footage, and distorted audio logs. Some tapes show the toys behaving autonomously, others document the owners experiencing sleep paralysis, distorted visions, or unexplained injuries. The timeline is intentionally scattered, encouraging viewers to piece together how Harmony toys became entangled with supernatural forces. The presentation avoids heavy glitch effects or overuse of distortion. Most of the tension comes from subtle shifts, a voice that suddenly changes pitch, a character's movements stuttering unnaturally, or a cheerful jingle looping a second too long. When moments of horror arrive, they're abrupt and visceral, breaking the calm tone of the videos without warning. While some fan theories suggest deeper cosmic or demonic elements behind the toys, the series leaves the exact source of the horror vague. Baddington confirmed in interviews that the ambiguity is intentional, allowing the focus to remain on atmosphere and the discomfort of watching something meant for children twist into something predatory. The Children Under the House. This series surfaced in 2021 with little context about its creator. The videos revolve around a suburban home where something is living beneath the floorboards. Each entry is presented as footage recovered from different sources, camcorders, security systems, or even real estate promotional tapes that were never meant for the public. The first recordings are ordinary. A realtor shows the property, a family films their move-in, or a maintenance worker records a crawlspace inspection. In each case, oddities begin to show up. Distant whispers, faint scratching, or glimpses of small pale figures just out of frame. Later footage captures long empty hallways under the house, far larger than the building above, as if the space is extending without explanation. There are no confirmed entities for the children. In some clips they appear human, crouched or crawling in the shadows. In others, their movements are unnatural, joints bending the wrong way or limbs stretched too far. Viewers argue over whether these figures are supernatural, human experiments, or hallucinations caused by whatever energy seems to saturate the property. Unlike many analog horror series that build toward a climax, The Children Under the House avoids clear escalation. The entries remain quiet, observational, and deliberately unresolved, letting the unease come from the endless suggestion that the home itself is more alive than the people who pass through it. Midwest Angelica, K. First appearing online in late 2022, Midwest Angelica by creator K is a regional horror series presented through a mix of local television recordings, security feeds, and distorted documentary clips. The setting is the rural Midwest, where an unseen force, referred to only as Angelica, seems to be influencing both the landscape and the people living there. The videos often resemble outdated public broadcasts or regional advertisements, with calm narrations and static-filled visuals that slowly reveal anomalies. Broadcasts might show small farming towns where buildings shift positions between cuts, or fields where shadows move against the wind. Occasionally, a figure resembling a woman can be seen at a distance, standing still for entire shots. She never speaks, and the footage cuts away before any interaction can occur. Instead of leaning on overt scares, the series uses repetition and disorientation to create unease. Some clips loop without context, showing abandoned roads or weather reports that replay the same phrases word for word. Others include sudden bursts of garbled audio that sound almost like speech, but never form recognizable words. There's no confirmed explanation for Angelica herself. Viewers speculate she could be an apparition, a collective hallucination, or even a projection from the land itself. K has left the series deliberately vague, focusing on mood and slow-building dread over any clear narrative. The Manurva Alliance. Debuting quietly on YouTube in 2020, the Manurva Alliance presents itself as a collection of declassified corporate and military archives, all tied to an organization known only as Manurva. The series avoids a traditional story, instead piecing together its world through training reels, security briefings, and technical demonstrations that feel authentic to the late Cold War and early digital era. The footage begins with neutral instructional content, lab walkthroughs, safety guidelines, and informational slides about research initiatives. Over time, fragments of something more disturbing emerge. Scientists in the clips mention non-local entities, and there are brief shots of large dark forms moving behind laboratory glass. Audio glitches introduce phrases like containment compromised and initiative redundancy protocols, often cut off mid-sentence by tape distortion. Most entries leave gaps where the context should be. Documents are redacted, dates are missing, and certain segments appear to replay or stutter as if the footage itself is resisting playback. A few tapes include heavily blurred silhouettes of what could be non-human shapes, but nothing is ever presented clearly enough to confirm. The lack of overt action has led to ongoing debate about the series. Some viewers interpret Manurva as a shadow corporation experimenting on interdimensional life forms. Others think the project is less about literal creatures and more about humanity's overreach into forces it doesn't understand. The creator has remained largely silent, letting the speculation grow. Hi, I'm Mary. Launched in 2016 by YouTuber Trey Watson, Hi, I'm Mary Mary blends elements of analog horror with vlogging and psychological horror. The series is presented as the video diary of Mary, a young woman trapped inside a house that never changes. Each video documents her attempts to understand her situation, deal with the isolation, and survive the increasingly hostile environment around her. Mary speaks directly to the camera, describing her daily routines and observations. At first, the house appears empty and static, but as time passes, figures begin appearing in the background, shadowed humanoid shapes and creatures referred to by fans as the Smiling Man and the Intruder. These entities stalk her silently, vanishing when approached but always returning, often closer than before. The horror isn't just in the intrusions. The house itself seems to distort reality. Mary experiences missing time, rooms that shift subtly, and events that reset without explanation. The sense of dread comes as much from the monotony as the supernatural, with Mary gradually showing signs of fatigue, paranoia, and resignation. Unlike some analog horror series that keep characters distant, Mary's vulnerability drives the emotional weight. Her conversations with the camera are candid, alternating between fear, frustration, and hopelessness. There's no definitive explanation for why she's trapped, or whether the entities are real, imagined, or part of the house itself. And as usual, the creator leaves most of the questions unanswered. Surreal Broadcast. Released in 2021, Surreal Broadcast is structured as a collection of hijacked television signals and corrupt satellite transmissions, with no clear origin or single narrative thread. Each entry is styled like a late-night broadcast interrupted by something unnatural, often mid-commercial or during public programming. The visual style leans heavily on distortion, signal static, looping frames, and washed-out colors that make the footage feel like it's barely holding together. Most clips last only a few minutes, and each one shifts in tone without warning. A weather forecast may glitch into footage of an unmarked landscape, or a commercial cuts abruptly into a human figure staring at the camera, motionless, as garbled audio plays. Certain videos feature distorted symbols overlaid on the screen, circles, grids, and broken letters, that repeat across multiple uploads but are never explained. Because there's no stated storyline, fans have tried to link the broadcasts into a timeline, theorizing that the interruptions come from an unknown intelligence using television as a medium to communicate, or to destabilize anyone watching. Others suggest it's more abstract, meant to represent humanity's inability to process signals from outside its own understanding. Somnium Dream Viewer. First appearing online in 2022, Somnium Dream Viewer frames itself as a promotional and instructional video series for a fictional sleep assist device called the Dream Viewer. The tapes resemble late 90s infomercials and training materials, complete with monotone narrators, calming synth music, and diagrams showing how the device helps induce vivid dreams. At first, the series appears to be a satire of outdated tech marketing, but each entry grows increasingly unsettling. The early videos focus on the supposed benefits of the Dream Viewer, improved sleep, lucid dreaming, and even access to shared dream environments. Later uploads introduce strange glitches. Test subjects speak in their sleep, describing places that don't exist. Dream recordings include figures moving in the periphery, and several videos end with warnings to avoid using the device during certain moon phases, with no explanation. The tapes gradually blur the line between dream and waking reality. Some segments suggest that prolonged use of the Dream Viewer draws the attention of something within the dream spaces, entities that seem aware of being observed. The voiceovers remain calm and instructional throughout, even as the imagery grows more distorted and surreal. Faces obscured, rooms stretching, and timestamps skipping ahead in ways that imply lost time. Unlike many analog horror projects, Somnium Dream Viewer never breaks its corporate facade. There are no overt panic moments or sudden reveals. The horror comes from how casually the tapes present their increasingly bizarre content, as if everything is proceeding as planned. This approach leaves viewers questioning whether the Dream Viewer is a tool, a lure, or something far worse disguised as a product. And that wraps up part 2 of our look into the strangest corners of analog horror. If you're looking for an entry point from this batch, the Walten Files is a solid place to start, especially if you want a more story-driven series to follow. For something slower and more cryptic, Somnium Dream Viewer is worth a look. And if you've been enjoying this deep dive, hit like, let us know your favorite series in the comments, and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next.